As mentioned last weekend, one of the many accusations of false or fraudulent content I've supposedly published recently is a claim that Democrats are engaging in abortion propaganda, as described in USA Today. This because I discussed the Democratic National Convention highlighting Kate Cox, a woman who repeatedly claims that the state of Texas denied her a medically necessary abortion, despite the fact that her own doctor would not testify that she needed a medically necessary abortion. And that case, of course, is just one in a series of straws grasped and stories exaggerated or outright fabricated to sustain the hysteria and the outrage about this issue returning back to the states, as is constitutionally prescribed, and of course, as was the legal standard in this country for 200 years until it wasn't, when activist judges put on their decoder glasses and discovered the secret meaning in the Reconstructionist amendments. When they talk about slavery and due process, what they actually mean is it's baby harvesting time. And that's the thing. Even if you want to dispute my analysis of the Kate Cox case in that video, it's not as though this is some isolated strategy. This is a focus of the Kamala campaign and Democratic campaigns by extension to scaremonger about some supposed forthcoming national abortion ban, despite 1, the Republican presidential ticket not supporting it, 2, the idea of not having any clear support in Congress either, and 3, the Supreme Court almost certainly striking that down too if it ever even happened anyway.
If Donald Trump were to be reelected, he will sign a national abortion ban. Understand, in his Project 2025, there would be a national abortion, a monitor that would be monitoring your pregnancies, your miscarriages.
It's a case that's twisted in too many ways to count, factually and morally. So if Kamala and Democrats aren't lying about abortion to make their points, why do they keep lying about abortion to make their points? It is a sad state of affairs when the supposed right to kill kids is among the most important issues in the race for so many, but it's even more twisted still when the lie machine is redlining to sustain exactly that effect. And in that pursuit, Kamala Harris gave an abortion speech in Georgia on Friday. I'm actually making this video as she's giving that speech right now, so I don't have that specific content available to me, but she's already previewed it in a campaign statement and on X. She's discussing the deaths of 2 women in Georgia she's attributing directly to the state's evil, cruel, barbaric 6-week abortion ban. And of course, before we even get to the facts of those cases, she's setting the stage with warm-up lies ahead of the main event. She tweeted Tuesday night, "Women are bleeding out in parking lots, turned away from emergency rooms. Survivors of rape and incest are being told they cannot make decisions about what happens next to their bodies." Asked for specifics about where and to whom this is happening, Kamala explained that she grew up in a middle-class neighborhood where these abused women would recover through the therapy of mowing their lawns for a sense of pride. So consider the point substantiated. Of course, there are no specifics provided because these cases don't exist. If they had even one case of a woman bleeding out and dying in the parking lot because she was refused care under some state law, they would be highlighting that case and promoting that family. There is no state in which such a thing is even the law anyway. Every abortion ban state in the union has a life of the mother exception. Now, as far as rape and incest cases, sure, 10 states do not have an exception because there is a compelling case that you don't execute the son for the sins of the father. But even if you disagree, that's a small minority of states and a tiny minority of abortions overall. According to analysis from pro-choice activists themselves, rape and incest abortions account for under 1.5% of the total anyway. And given that activist source, that's almost certainly inflated. So if this is so common, women getting raped and then MAGA Republicans laughing at them and high-fiving the rapist while they march these women off to forced pregnancy camps, again, where are these women? If Democrats had them, they'd be promoting them, which makes the cases the Democrats do have all the more suspicious after assuredly scouring the country for cases of this theme. Women dying because of abortion bans, or women forced to carry their rapist child against their will. Kamala is highlighting these 2 cases, and upon just the lightest touch of scrutiny, These are clearly not at all what she characterized. Kamala's tweet thread describes a young mother in Georgia who should still be alive today. She's talking about a woman named Amber Thurman, who sought an abortion and died in August 2022, shortly after Georgia's law took effect, after the Supreme Court overturned Roe v. Wade that June. Kamala says Georgia's law prevented Thurman from getting basic medical care, though as we'll see, that is not what happened. Kamala brought this woman's family to her Oprah town hall event in Michigan on Thursday night, and right away, the circumstances are suspicious. Thurman's mother says she initially resisted speaking publicly about her daughter's death.
Initially, I did not want the public to know my pain. I wanted to go through in silence.
And also only recently became aware of the cause of her daughter's death, even though she died over 2 years ago.
You just learned about how it is that she died. And
they just recently learned, yes.
How?
Yeah.
Well, wait, who told you how she died then? Because it wasn't doctors 2 years ago, apparently. So tell me, was it Democrat activists and their media allies who hounded you into promoting the story as they wanted it told?
I pushed them away. No. But Kavithia, she was persistent. She said it was something that you needed to know. You have to hear me.
So right away, you know this is not a story guided by the facts. This is a story guided by its utility for the party. Not even as cynically inferred, it's as described themselves. You did not know the story until we told you the story. According to that ProPublica report Thurman's mother was describing, Amber Thurman was pregnant with twins. She decided after 6 weeks of pregnancy that she wanted an abortion. She planned to get a surgical abortion in North Carolina, but she missed her appointment due to traffic, and instead the clinic gave her a 2-pill abortion regimen. In the days after taking the pills, she experienced heavy bleeding. She vomited blood, and she passed out at home. Her boyfriend called an ambulance. She went to the hospital. She was septic because her babies had not fully evacuated her body. And instead of performing the usual procedure to remove that fetal tissue from her uterus, doctors instead just waited. She wasn't taken to surgery for 20 hours. And when they finally operated, she died during the surgery when her heart stopped. A state investigation concluded that Thurman would have had a good chance of surviving if she had surgical intervention earlier, and highlighted the hospital's lack of proper protocol for handling the situation. As far as Kamala's characterization that this was a case of a woman bleeding out in the parking lot in desperate need of emergency care but denied because that's what state law requires, not even close. One, there is no clear evidence that fear of the law is what caused the delay in care, despite thorough investigation of the records and parties involved, as the ProPublica reporter acknowledges. Two, even if that is what doctors thought, oh, we have to let her die to follow the law. No, that is not what the law says. Georgia law has a very clear abortion exception for the life of the mother. Three, even if this case wouldn't qualify for a legal abortion exception, at that point, doctors weren't performing an abortion anyway. The babies were already dead. Removal of tissue after fetal death is not illegal in Georgia or any other state. So when Kamala says state law required these doctors to reject this woman, no, it didn't. The law specifically authorizes them to help her, and they didn't. This was negligence or malpractice contrary to the law, not in adherence to it. And the same disconnect applies to Kamala's second supposed example of state-enforced execution for women seeking to exercise their rights too. This story also supplied by the same suspect ProPublica reporter, similar time frame, similar situation. Candy Miller also got pregnant in 2022, according to the story as told by her friend in the report. She had several chronic conditions and didn't want to wait until a situation became life-threatening to get an abortion, so she avoided doctors altogether and ordered abortion pills online. And when she took them, same effect. She did not expel all the fetal tissue. She needed surgical intervention. She did not seek medical attention until, likewise, her family found her unresponsive and she died. So again, this was not a case of doctors refusing to provide care for some woman in desperate need because state law has banned it. No, this was a case of a woman not seeking medical care as fully authorized by state law. And complicating this case is the fact that it's not at all clear if sepsis was actually the cause of death. The autopsy discovered a lethal combination of painkillers, including, yes, fentanyl. Medical records state that Miller had no known history of drug use, but we also know from this description that this was a person who avoided medical attention anyway. I'm just saying, whenever the progressive narrative requires us to believe that fentanyl was just some incidental asterisk and not a primary factor, there is always more to the story. And even if you want to be as generous as possible and say that this death was directly attributable to abortion complications and not some other factor, well, in this case, just like the first case, there is no evidence demonstrating that fear of the law is what motivated the course of action. And even if that was demonstrated, it would be a misunderstanding of the law, not following it. And for that reason, you'll notice in both of these cases, there is no mention of any police officer or prosecutor or politician threatening to make an arrest or bring any charges or even shake a fist at these women and their doctors. So even if you buy these stories as told, where are the boogeymen supposedly treating these women and their doctors like criminals? Because if this stuff is actually illegal, surely Kamala and the Democrats must have endless examples of women getting medically necessary surgical attention after complication from the abortion pill, and then their doctors getting prosecuted, right? No, that would be another piece of the story for which they have no examples, because it's not happening. And remember, with all the resources of the Democrat Party machine, all the record-breaking hundreds of millions of dollars in campaign donations that charismatic Kamala Harris clearly inspires with all of her compelling stories like these, the very best examples they can come up with have almost no connection to the story that they want to tell. This is like searching for Bigfoot and selling Curious George as the evidence. Sure, I guess those things are kind of related, but it's going to take a lot more than that to prove your point. And whether it's Bigfoot, unicorns, or women bleeding out in parking lots because medically necessary abortions are illegal, if the Democrat machine can't find it, it doesn't exist. Worst of all, though, all the attention and examination on the specific facts of these two very rare cases distracts from the broader moral point on which this issue should be judged anyway. Because even if these women were killed by supposedly overly strict state law, in what way does that compel the free harvest of thousands or millions of innocent lives to fix it? Well, two women died in extremely isolated and inconclusive circumstances, so I guess that means that abortion at any time for any reason is the only reasonable response. No, the reasonable response is exactly the sort of state law that they're trying to defeat. Protection for both the life of the unborn child and the life of the mother, and ending that unborn life only when it's absolutely necessary to save the life of the mother, which is almost never. The law that solves the issue that Kamala is raising is the same law that she's looking to erase. And ironically and tragically, it's not some right-wing agenda that's responsible for these deaths. Much more plausibly, it's a progressive one. It's the ease of access and the insufficient explanation of the risks of the abortion pill. Remember, that issue was taken all the way to the Supreme Court, and the justices rejected the challenge on standing. Can the FDA just change the rules about access to the abortion pill at will? They did in 2016 and again for COVID in 2021. And then the easier emergency access methods just became permanent. And I know the legal question there is a complicated one, so I'm not even saying the Supreme Court got that wrong. I am saying that these women did not die because of lack of access to abortion. With these pills, they had easier access than ever. They died because of abortion. And of course, as intended, so did their children. The cult of safe and effective struck again with Kamala and company shilling the pills that actually caused these emergencies in the first place. But sure, if we just listen more to the people causing the emergencies, eventually they're going to resolve the emergencies to keep us safe and prosperous. If you saw that show with COVID and the economy, and every other context in which they deploy that ruse, and you still believe it, well, At some point, you have earned the fate that you have chosen. Because if you routinely allow these people to kick you in the nuts and call it soccer practice, well, then you couldn't be any more thoroughly captured by the game. Thanks as always for listening and for supporting this channel. Always appreciate that thoughtful discussion down below, and especially over on X. That is at ML Christiansen. You're always welcome to coming out and chatting my live streams. Those are live on Wednesday and Sunday nights. Looking forward to it. Goodbye.